first to give you the heads up that next week our new time slot will be 7 p.m. on a Friday night. So I'll be joining you for dinner with the usual repeat on Sundays at 1:30 p.m. So don't forget to diarise the schedule change, Rod Suskin's World, 7 p.m. on Fridays from next week. In the meanwhile, this week I have an interview that I've been waiting to do for years. Zolani Mahola, well known as the front of Freshlyground, that magical voice, launches her solo career this year, and I'm so excited to be the first one to interview her with that great launch. So let's not wait another second. Join me for an amazing chat with Zolani. That the first time I met you, and I'm sure you won't remember this because it was like the middle of the night kind of thing, was at Lisa Child's house. I used to do a radio show with her, and you were on her roof garden, and she just wanted to let everyone hear your voice, basically. And I mean, it's such a cliche, but it's really true, that it was that situation of, when you hear that voice, it's going to be famous, because it's that kind of a voice. But you were a varsity student. I think you had big glasses on.
Yes, I had glasses on those days.
And it was like, well, you're not going to be like this varsity student for long. Someone's going to discover this. So, how? Well, who discovered you? I mean, how did it? Because it came true. It wasn't one of my predictions. It was screamingly obvious. Anyone would have known. How were you discovered?
So I was in my third year at university, and then I met the guys who would become Freshlyground.
Right.
And how that happened was that I was in a play, and I was singing in this play. I didn't do a lot of...
Because you were studying acting.
I was studying acting.
You thought you were going to be an actor.
Yeah, completely. So I was at drama school, and I never took the singing thing seriously at all. And I happened to be singing in this particular production.
Oh, wow.
And the guy who was the first guy to approach another dude and say, I play piano, I heard you play guitar, let's get together. He saw me in this play, and he invited me to come and see them play in Observatory. And they were kind of playing more very instrumental, almost jazzy arrangements. And he saw that I was there, and he called me up onto the stage to sing with him. And I did. And that was the beginning of my time with Freshlyground.
There was a point at which everyone was talking about Freshlyground. And it was as if it was like this big sensation that have come.
It was a good feeling.
Yeah.
It was a very good feeling. I think, the fact that it was just all these very quite disparate people, melding genres and things. It was good. It was a good vibe.
So I mean, obviously you were trained as an actor, but you were never then trained as a singer. You just could sing.
Yeah, and singing was always, in my environment, just in terms of traditional ceremonies.
Right.
And then the radio, listening to pop stars from here, to listening to a whole lot of Motown music and things. So it was, we loved singing. My big brother and I and my little sister, we sang all the time. But still, I never thought...
Everyone has heard your voice. Because that's also the amazing thing about, where Freshlyground went. And it's like, is there anyone who doesn't know that song, which is Doobie Doo?
Doobie Doo, yeah.
And can sing it. And it's a little bit like being one of the actors in Star Wars, that you become this cultural thing that's beyond your identity.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of that. So let's then rewind back to some of your identity. You start off wanting to act, and kind of presumably thinking that's what you're going to do. So what happened to the acting?
So what happened to the acting is that it really got very much relegated. In a way, although, with the songwriting, I got to write stories, and then when I was in the performance of them, I got to be those characters. So there's definitely a big, obviously performance element, in the live thing that I definitely dealt a lot of my likes and training, acting training.
So did you ever feel, as it's unfolding, and it's unfolding successfully, did you ever feel, I want to get back to my acting path. I should be over there and I'm standing over here.
There were some times, but mostly not. Mostly I was riding the wave. When I did eventually then do a production years and years and years on last year, my own theatre production, there was an electric feeling of like, wow, okay, this is very different actually. You know, and the very different thing had different thing for me in particular with this production had a lot to do with the fact that it was my story that I was dramatizing.
Well, I want to ask you about that
Yeah.
production, because it was an extraordinary thing, and one of the reasons I'm even asking these questions, because that's what also went through my mind. So last year you did your solo show, The One Who Sings.
Yes.
So there is that journey that you go through as a performer, but even telling your own story, the journey that you go through, I'd imagine it's an even deeper thing, because as if you get to reflect on it in a different way every single night.
Yes.
And is there a function in music, for one, and perhaps also in theatre, for the audience person to go through that narrative journey and reflect on themselves?
The journey that I go through with songs like Doobie Doo and a lot of the catalogue of Freshlyground, the music that I've been singing for 17 years, is, yeah, it's quite a radically different feeling from that feeling that I had, let's say, that I had on stage telling my story, sort of acting. And that said also to the music that I did in that show, right? So all the music that I do in my theatrical production, they are my songs that I have written, that I have a very different relationship with.
Yeah.
With a song like Doobie Doo.
Yeah, and they are rather different
it's
songs. Your style is very different to Freshlyground.
It's radically different. Yeah. So I do go through a lot of emotions with those songs. You know, with my songs that I have been writing since I was, you know, since I was a young person. Than songs that I've written in the group, you know, in a collaborative, you know, format, and songs that I've been singing and that mean a lot of different things to a lot of people all over the world. It's a much more personal, visceral experience because it feels like it is something that is coming from my inner being.
No matter how many times you do it?
No matter... I don't know yet because I haven't been performing my songs for that long. They've been mine.
Yes.
You know, and I've been singing them for myself. So I suspect that, you know, by the 17th year that I'm singing my songs.
Well, because but that's a question that even applies to the Freshlyground songs, because I often think about this for any performer. So there's certain performers who there's certain songs associated with them from their career.
Sure.
And they find themselves, you know, 40 years later still having to sing that song.
Sure.
Because the audience wants it.
Absolutely.
And I wonder, you know, is it hard work to have to sing that same song after 17 years?
You know, I actually enjoy singing those songs, and particularly my last year now with the band has been one of the best years, you know, that we've ever had. We've played better, you know, as a band. I don't know if there's something that has happened. Maybe it was knowing that it was the last year. It's such an interesting thing, this thing that you say of people sort of expecting, because they associate these songs and an experience and an era, you know, with me, that this is what they want to hear. I'm now at a point in my career where I'm saying, actually, I want to be something else. You know, I want to be and do something else, and so I'm now, even when I'm getting booked now for my solo works, they always ask, will you do these songs? Will you sing Doobie Doo? And I have to say no. You know, because I feel like I'm at a different point, and maybe I will further on, you know, feel like I want to sing those songs again, but I actually just don't right now.
So that presumably is the producers asking you if you're going to sing that song. What about the audience? That's
Sure.
going to be an interesting challenge because this is Zolani and
Yeah.
you get to the end of the show and she
Yeah.
hasn't sung Doobie Doo.
Yes.
And they all think she's saving it for the encore. They always do that. But they're going to start shouting out Doobie Doo. What are you going to do?
Can I tell you an interesting thing that I've observed? My offering is so radically different.
Right. Oh, right.
It's so radically
Yeah.
different. The whole from the setup, from the people accompanying me. So I at the moment I'm playing with a trio of other women, 2 other women, and it looks, it sounds, it feels very different.
Mm.
It's a very sacred space that I am entering into. And so all of my performances are, by the time you get halfway through the show, people they're not thinking about Freshlyground songs.
That's true.
They're not
Yeah.
thinking about Doobie Doo. It almost feels like another performer.
And
It
so
feels
much
like another
so,
life.
that's actually quite a powerful thing because actually thinking about now my experience just of seeing your show was almost like I forgot your connection with Freshlyground by the time we were halfway through that show because of the journey you took me on.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to say about that show is, like I just mentioned in passing, because of its autobiographical nature, you can't help but get your own autobiographical story going in your head.
Yes, I actually wanted to echo that you'd said that is precisely the point of the play, The One Who Sings. And it's precisely the point of all of my work going forward. We've all got a story.
Yeah.
We've all got a journey. We've all had these things that have informed who we are. And for me, a big part of my decision to leave the band and to tell my own stories and to sing my own songs was because I went on a journey which started with me realizing that I was behaving very unconsciously because of stories that I hadn't investigated in my past. I hadn't actually been curious enough about where I was and whether I was in the place that I wanted to be. And so I went on a process of seeing why I behave like this, why do I drink like I do, why do I eat like I do, why do I keep doing these behaviors that make me actually very unhappy.
Yeah.
And I realized there were things that I hadn't answered for myself in my past, and so I had to redress that. Now I had to go back and say, well, okay, is this still valid? Are these stories still true to me? And a lot of the answers were no. And so I had to make new stories.
Right. But of course they still can be valid to someone else.
They still can be valid to
I
someone
think
else.
two of the things that strike me in what you did talk about in your show, firstly the loss of your mom at a young age. And we often, it doesn't necessarily have to be a traumatic impact for everyone, obviously not. But obviously it is an impact because it changed your life and it changed how the circumstances of your life were, including kind of the loss of your name. And to me, that was so powerful, amongst other things, in your story was at some point you reclaimed your name.
Yes.
And I felt a sense of relief when you came to that part of the story, as if it was me,
Good.
So there was that sense of, I felt so troubled when you told me that, I think it was with your dad's new wife, they called you by a different name.
It was once, so many things happened in very quick succession, and I actually so much of the stuff I actually didn't even know until I started asking questions.
Right.
So the death of my mother was the first kind of really shocking thing to happen in my life. We then moved to a different neighborhood. It was a more upmarket neighborhood, but we were also, it was this family that was supposed to move. Then she was dead, and then my father also psychologically sort of came to was removed.
Sure.
He married a woman, right, and she was terrible. She's still alive, so I mean, she's fine now. But it was a very toxic situation, and she had 2 sons, and one of them sexually abused me for years. And And then in the course of all of that trauma, I started going to a new school, and it was a Catholic school. And my name then changed from Zolani to Monica.
Of all the names I could have chosen.
I know, I can't believe I just said that also on air. But yeah, so a lot, you know, a lot of things. And the abuse is an interesting thing for me, like I didn't want to make the play about the fact that I've been sexually abused as a child, even though it was such a, it's a massive piece. Also a massive piece that I'd never spoken about publicly before.
Yeah.
But it was important.
Well, I get that. I mean, it's important to mention it, but not to let it become the piece.
Yes, yes.
Because then it distracts from where the piece is.
It does, but it is such a. I also had to question myself, though, you know, about wanting to potentially minimize it, because it's not minimal, you know. It's a massive part, and it's also something that happens to a lot of people.
It does. But I think what is key about your show and about your music and about you, certainly at this stage, is that it's about identity. And it's important that the abuse is part of your identity.
Yes.
It's not your identity.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why I thought it wasn't about minimizing it. It was about contextualizing it.
Yes.
To say I own that part of me, but it's a part of me.
Yes.
And I'm much more than that as well.
Yes.
And that was what was also powerful about eventually reclaiming your name.
Yeah.
And why I felt such relief sitting there in the audience when you told that, because it's like, to me, it felt like you got yourself back.
Yes.
Even if you didn't identify with the name they'd given you, whatever, it was at that point that I thought, it's like you won. You got your name back.
Yes.
You know, and so and so then getting back to what we were talking about, that there's this journey that you go on as a performer, be it an actor, but especially perhaps a singer singing her own music, is that it's this constant interrogation and discovery of your own identity that you're doing in front of all these people all the time.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's why your voice is so powerful to people, that it gets to some deep place, even if you're singing a happy song.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do is always my ultimate aim is to connect. You know, is to connect. I remember when I had to write my motivational letter to get into varsity, and they asked me, they said, you know, why do you want the scholarship? You know, I said, I want to be able to do this so that I can encourage people to know themselves. Years later, I named my son Zazi, which means know yourself. Zazi. You know?
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's what I want to do with all of my work. I want us to connect with ourselves, connect with our stories, you know, connect with why we're here.
Well, certainly for me, I mean, so I think your show, The One Who Sings, because you finished with Freshlyground now, wrapped up that chapter of your life. It's an amazing chapter, and only get the next amazing chapter from there. But so The One Who Sings was obviously the transition. That's your first own show, extremely powerful for a first show in exploring that identity. But then also perhaps the bigger picture is that you're also reclaiming yourself back, not only as Zolani, your name, but you as you following your path. You're part of an amazing adventure, an amazing group at Freshlyground. There's also that sense of, I also now have to reclaim my identity as me, this performer.
Oh, you are spot on, because I came to a point where I lost myself. You know, I lost that checking in thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of just, you know, I allowed myself to get onto a wheel and just kind of sort of do the same sort of things, which
we get safe. That's what happens.
Get safe, and that made me very unsafe, because it brought out all of my ways that I used of coping with life whenever life got too hectic, that I'd learned when I was a little girl. And all of these coping mechanisms were ways that I escaped Anything to distract me from my feelings. Later on it became alcohol. You know, and I speak about this in my show as well. This was also quite a big reveal, is that I used alcohol to really numb myself, you know, and to just distract myself from myself, essentially.
But of course, you know, that's art requires you to be courageous.
Yeah.
And that's why, and for me, I mean, and I could be wrong, but things like, no matter how young you are, whatever, the death of your mom at a young age, there's wounds that artists carry, and I think that's what makes them into artists. That they've constantly got to try, and wounds don't heal, but they're constantly working at it, or looking at it again, or trying to heal it, or whatever. It's different every time, but there's that wound that keeps on pushing. And that's why it was such a transformative show. But I think that people seeing that show, or in future listening to your own music,
yes,
I suspect are going to be taken, even if, never mind the content of the music, will be taken on that journey.
Yeah.
Because that's where your art is coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I think a very important motivator for me to do the show was this, you know, when you are a celebrated artist or person, a lot of the time your humanity is divorced. You know, like people sort of see you, they see you on social media, they see you on television, you know, and they feel like that person can't possibly have the same problems as me, or not even necessarily problems, but like they can't possibly relate to me. They're nothing like me.
Yeah.
You know, and a big part of the show was to bring back, even for myself, my own humanity. You know, and even for myself.
Yeah. If I know a secret about you, then I can expose it anytime. So I've got power over you. And if you don't play the game, I'm going to tell them all. So you have to play the game. If you then expose it, it's like, sorry for you, I'm the powerful one, and we all know that. And what are you going to do about it?
Yes.
And so there is that, and I think people respond to that you sharing some of your power, in fact, when you reveal. It's not sharing a weakness, it's sharing a strength, and can give them the courage.
It's going to be really interesting, this next chapter, because I'm not really seeing it very much as like a, I'm done with being outwardly. Right,
exactly.
You know, I really am interested in the journey that is within. So it's gonna, I don't know if that translates to popular appeal, and I don't know if that is like the requisite for somebody who's remembered as a great artist. You know what I mean?
Well,
so it's going to be really interesting. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing what this next chapter yields.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it because it includes a lot of music to listen to. And,
it's exciting.
It's very exciting.
It's really exciting.
So are we looking forward to an album?
So you definitely looking forward to some music. I don't know about a full-length album to start with. Certainly, I've definitely got a lot of music. What I want to do is I want to play. I want to release. I want to record some things, and then release them, and then record some things, and then release them, and then work with different kinds of artists and different setups and things. So what I am going to do is I'll be releasing some music in March.
Oh, great.
I've already recorded some beautiful work, and from there it will begin.
And acting, will that happen again?
And acting will happen again. I will definitely do the one who sings. Yes, definitely. There's already some things some festivals on the cards. How
very exciting
it
indeed.
is.
So in many ways, you know, you're at a beginning point again.
Yeah, isn't that
which
crazy?
Is amazing. Yeah.
Nearly 20 years on, and nearly 40 years old, I'm starting again.
Nowadays, at least, people, men and women alike, have more opportunities to say, if this is who I am, I'm going to do this thing.
True.
So there is more chance of that. We identify a 21-year identity cycle in astrology, so around 42, a new identity starts, which is similar to age 21, the first time one comes around. People say life begins at 40, and that's why. Because they look back and they realize, I finally became what I always wanted to be. and that takes getting to the 40s.
Alala.
It is, and you're such a great example of that. All on your own, you're just realizing, and you're lucky you've had a great career, as it should be in the first part of your life, but now I'm finally ready to be me. Yeah. And that's a powerful thing. I just can't wait to witness as your friend and as your fan.
Rod.
And I think the whole of South Africa can't wait to see that and hear that as well. Don't forget, next week I'll be here at the new time of 7 p.m. on Friday night. And from every week will be 7 p.m. on Friday nights, repeating on Sundays at 1:30 as usual. So hope to see you again.